I had always dreamed of being a mother. But life, with its cruel sense of humor, had other plans for me. After years of tests, treatments, and heartbreak, the doctors confirmed what I had already begun to suspect: I would never be able to have children of my own. It was a devastating truth to swallow, but my husband, Daniel, held me through the darkest nights, whispering that we would find another way. That we would still have a family. And so, 2 years ago, after much discussion, we adopted a 16-year-old girl named Emily. We had chosen an older child deliberately. We weren't looking to start from the very beginning with diapers and lullabies. We wanted to provide a home to someone who had spent too long without one. Emily had grown up bouncing between foster homes and orphanages. She was quiet, reserved, and hesitant at first, but we poured our love into her. We tried to show her that she was safe now. That she was home. Over time, she blossomed. She started smiling more, laughing at Daniel's terrible dad jokes, even hugging me before bed. Those little gestures made my heart soar. We were a family. A real one. But looking back, I wonder, was it all an illusion? Emily turned 18 a few weeks ago. We celebrated with a quiet dinner at home, just the three of us. She looked so radiant that night, her auburn hair cascading over her shoulders, her eyes sparkling with excitement. She had asked Daniel to teach her how to drive, and he had eagerly agreed. I should have seen it then. Maybe I should have noticed the way his hand lingered a little too long on her back when he guided her toward the cake. Or the way she glanced at him, almost shyly. But I was blind. I was happy. Until the night my world shattered. I had told them I was going away on business for the weekend. It was a lie. In truth, I wanted to surprise them, maybe bring home dinner, maybe catch a glimpse of them watching a movie together, enjoying the home we had built. But as I stepped into the house that night, something felt off. At first, I thought I was imagining things. A strange sound, a soft moan, the rustle of sheets. It was coming from our bedroom. Our bedroom. Dread crawled up my spine. My heart pounded so loudly that I could barely hear my own footsteps as I crept closer. The door wasn't even locked. I turned the handle and stepped inside. And there they were. My husband. My daughter. Tangled together in the bed we had shared for years. For a second, I couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. The world around me tilted, my vision narrowing into a dark tunnel of disbelief. Then, finally, I found my voice. Daniel? Daniel froze. Emily gasped, yanking the sheets up to cover herself, as if that could somehow erase what I had just seen. For a long, excruciating moment, none of us spoke. My mind struggled to comprehend the horror unfolding before me. The air in the room was thick, suffocating. My heart pounded so violently in my chest that I thought I might pass out. I took a shaky step forward. What the hell is this? Daniel scrambled off the bed, his face drained of color. He reached for his clothes, stammering, I can explain. Explain? There was no explanation. No justification. No words in the entire universe that could make this right. Emily turned her face away, tears streaming down her cheeks. But I couldn't even look at her. My gaze was locked on my husband, the man I had trusted more than anyone in the world. He stepped toward me, hands outstretched, as if he could calm me with a touch. Listen, it's not what it looks like. I let out a bitter laugh. Not what it looks like. My voice was unrecognizable, raw with rage and betrayal. Then what is it, Daniel? Because it sure as hell looks like you were in our bed with our daughter. Emily sobbed. I'm sorry. I didn't mean. Shut up, I snapped, my voice trembling. She flinched. And for the first time, I realized how young she still was. How foolish. How utterly lost. But it didn't matter. Nothing mattered anymore. Daniel tried again. Please, just listen. No, I backed away. If he touched me, I'd shatter. Don't you dare come near me. I needed to get out. My skin crawled just being in the same room as them. I turned on my heel and stormed down the hall, my breath ragged. I heard Daniel calling after me, but I didn't stop. I grabbed my purse, my keys, and threw open the front door. The night air hit me like a slap. I staggered to my car, my hands trembling as I fumbled with the keys. Behind me, I could hear Daniel's footsteps pounding against the porch. "Wait," he shouted. But I didn't wait. I threw myself into the driver's seat, turned the key, and sped off into the darkness. I had no destination. No plan. All I knew was that I had to get away before the weight of what I had just witnessed crushed me entirely. I drove aimlessly through the night, my knuckles white as I gripped the steering wheel. My mind was a hurricane, thoughts colliding, memories unraveling. I kept replaying the moment over and over, the way Daniel looked at me, the way Emily cowered under the sheets, the way my entire world collapsed in a single breath. I let out a scream, raw and guttural, as I slammed my fist against the dashboard. This wasn't real. This wasn't my life. But it was. The betrayal burned in my chest like acid. I had given Daniel everything. My love. My trust. My faith. And Emily? I had brought her into our home, nurtured her, loved her as my own daughter. And they had repaid me with this. A sickening nausea churned in my stomach. I pulled into a deserted gas station and stumbled out of the car, barely making it to the side of the building before I doubled over and threw up. My entire body trembled as I braced myself against the cold concrete wall. I didn't know how long I stood there, gasping for breath, my mind racing in endless circles. But eventually, my phone buzzed in my pocket. Daniel. I stared at the screen, my heart slamming against my ribs. He was calling me. I had half a mind to throw my phone into the street, but instead, I answered, my voice sharp as glass. Don't you dare say a word. There was silence on the other end. Then, softly, please, come home. Home. That word made me sick. That's not my home anymore, I spat. Not after what you did. He sighed. Let me explain. I clenched my jaw. You don't get to explain. You don't get to fix this, Daniel. You destroyed everything. Everything. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said the last thing I ever expected. It wasn't just me. My blood turned to ice. What? Daniel hesitated. It wasn't one-sided. I gripped the phone so tightly my fingers ached. What the hell does that mean? He let out a shaky breath. I didn't force her, okay? She wanted this. I recoiled as if he had struck me. My stomach twisted in on itself, and for a moment, I thought I might be sick again. She's a child, Daniel. I screamed. She's our daughter. She's not our daughter, he snapped. And she's not a child. She's 18, and he stopped himself. Look, I know it's wrong, but you need to understand. I hung up. I couldn't listen to another word. Tears blurred my vision as I stumbled back to my car. My hands shook as I tried to steady my breathing. I had to do something. I couldn't let this stand. I had spent 2 years building a family. And in one night, it had been ripped away from me. But if they thought I was just going to disappear, they were wrong. I wasn't done yet. I drove through the empty streets, my thoughts spiraling deeper into darkness. Every breath I took felt jagged, raw. The betrayal wasn't just a wound, it was a living, breathing thing, clawing at me from the inside. Daniel and Emily. My husband. My daughter. I wanted to scream. I wanted to rip apart the world with my bare hands. But instead, I gripped the wheel tighter, my nails digging into my palms. I needed a plan. I couldn't just collapse. I couldn't just let them destroy me and walk away unscathed. No. They had already taken everything from me. I wouldn't let them take my dignity, too. I pulled into a hotel parking lot, my body running on fumes. The neon vacancy sign buzzed in the night, casting an eerie glow over the pavement. I walked inside like a ghost, barely registering the clerk's words as I handed over my credit card. The second I locked myself in my room, I collapsed onto the bed. But sleep didn't come. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw them. Daniel's hands on her body. Emily's lips parting beneath his. The intimacy, the secrecy, the utter betrayal. I bolted upright, my chest heaving. I couldn't stay in this room, drowning in my own thoughts. I needed to do something. So I reached for my phone. If Daniel wanted to destroy our family, I was going to make damn sure he paid for it. I scrolled through my contacts until I found who I was looking for. My hands trembled as I typed out a message. Me, I need to see you. It's important. A few minutes passed before my screen lit up with a reply. Sophie, are you okay? No. Not even close. Me, I'll explain when I see you. Can I come over? Sophie, of course. I'm here. I grabbed my keys and headed back to my car. Sophie was my best friend, the one person I knew I could trust. She had always warned me about Daniel, not because she suspected this, but because she said he was too perfect. No man is that good, she'd told me once. One day, the mask is going to slip. And it had. Oh, God, had it slipped. 15 minutes later, I was standing on Sophie's doorstep, my body shaking from exhaustion and rage. She opened the door, took one look at me, and pulled me into a hug. I broke. Sobs racked my body, and for the first time since I had opened that bedroom door, I let myself feel it. The betrayal. The grief. The unbearable loss. Sophie didn't say anything. She just held me, her fingers stroking my back as I shattered in her arms. Finally, I pulled away, wiping at my face. I don't know what to do, I choked out. Sophie led me inside and sat me down on the couch. Tell me everything. And I did. Every single horrible detail. By the time I was done, Sophie looked as sick as I felt. That bastard, she breathed. That disgusting, pathetic bastard. I nodded numbly. What are you going to do? She asked. I exhaled shakily. I don't know. But I knew one thing for certain. I wasn't going to let Daniel and Emily walk away from this without consequences. Sophie poured me a glass of water, but I barely touched it. My hands were shaking too much. You need a plan, she said, her voice steely. I nodded. I needed more than a plan. I needed justice. Or maybe I needed revenge. I wasn't sure which yet. Sophie's eyes darkened. You can't let him get away with this. I exhaled shakily. I don't even know where to start. She leaned forward. First things first, you can't go back to that house. That house. I had spent years making it a home. And now, it was tainted. I swallowed hard. I won't. Not yet. Sophie nodded. Then we go for the next step, exposing him. The words sent a shiver through me. Could I really do it? Could I take this secret, this shameful, disgusting thing, and drag it into the light? Daniel and Emily had betrayed me in the worst possible way. Did they deserve to have their lives burned down the way they had burned mine? The answer came swiftly. Yes. I clenched my fists. How? Sophie smirked. Oh, honey. There are so many ways. Step 1, information is power. We started with the basics. Do you have proof? Sophie asked. I hesitated. I walked in on them. That's not enough. She chewed her lip. He'll lie. He'll twist it. We need something concrete. I thought for a moment. Daniel wasn't stupid, he wouldn't leave texts or emails. But I had left the house suddenly. I hadn't checked the security cameras. My head snapped up. The cameras. Sophie's eyes widened. You have cameras? I nodded. Not in the bedroom, obviously. But the hallways, the living room, the front door. If they were sneaking around before I caught them. Her lips curled into a wicked smile. Then we'll have a trail of breadcrumbs. I grabbed my phone and logged into the security system. My heart hammered as I scrolled through the footage remotely. And then my stomach dropped. There they were. Daniel and Emily. In the living room, days before her birthday. Sitting too close. Whispering. Touching. It had been going on for weeks. Maybe longer. I covered my mouth, bile rising in my throat. Sophie took the phone from me, her jaw tightening. This is gold, she muttered. He can't deny this. I squeezed my eyes shut. My world was cracking apart all over again. But now, I had proof. And with proof came power. Step 2, the strike. What do you want to do with this? Sophie asked, voice careful. I breathed deeply, forcing the anger to steady me. I want everyone to know. She grinned. Then let's get creative. We spent the next hour strategizing. Option 1, send the footage to his job. Daniel was a respected man in his field, this would ruin him. Option 2, family and friends. His parents, his colleagues, his friends who always thought we were the perfect couple. Let them see the truth. Option 3, Emily's social worker. Even though she was 18, she had been under our care as a daughter, there had to be legal consequences. The more we planned, the clearer I felt. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to cry. I was going to destroy them. And when I was done, neither of them would have anywhere left to hide. The next morning, I woke up with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. The shock had settled into something colder, sharper, purpose. Sophie was already awake, sitting at the kitchen table with her laptop open. She had a cup of coffee in one hand and a determined gleam in her eye. Ready? She asked. I nodded. Let's end this. Step 1, the family bomb. I started with his parents. Daniel's mother, Margaret, had always doted on him. She was the kind of woman who believed her son could do no wrong. But even she wouldn't be able to justify this. I hit dial. She answered on the second ring. Oh, sweetheart, Daniel told me you ran off last night. Are you okay? Ran off. That's what he told her. I clenched my jaw. Margaret, I said carefully, I need to tell you something about Daniel. And Emily. There was a long pause. What about her? I hesitated for only a moment before I said the words out loud. I caught them together. In bed. Silence. Then, Margaret gasped. A deep, broken sound, like something inside her had cracked in two. What are you saying? I swallowed. I have proof. It's been going on for weeks. Her breathing turned ragged. My God. And then, as if something inside her snapped, she sobbed. Loud, ugly sobs. My own son. My own son. I didn't feel sorry for her. This was his doing. I'm so sorry, I lied. But I needed you to know. Margaret inhaled sharply. This isn't over. I almost smiled. Good. Step 2, the scorched earth. Next, Sophie helped me compose an email. We attached the security footage. The clips of Daniel and Emily sneaking around the house, touching, whispering. We didn't include the bedroom footage. I wasn't going to traumatize people, but it was damning enough. Then we wrote. To those who thought Daniel was a good man. Here's the truth. For weeks, my husband has been sleeping with our adopted daughter. I walked in on them. I have proof. Attached, you will find footage of them sneaking around behind my back. Daniel is not who you think he is. And neither is Emily. They both betrayed me. And now, everyone will know. His soon-to-be ex-wife. Sophie grinned as she hit send. It went to everyone. His colleagues. His boss. His parents. Our mutual friends. The moment it was sent, a weight lifted from my chest. It had begun. Step 3, the fallout. It didn't take long. My phone started buzzing within the hour. Messages poured in, some in shock, some in disgust. Then came the call I was waiting for. Daniel. I let it ring. Then I blocked his number. Sophie smirked. He's going to explode. I didn't care. I wanted him to suffer. And this was only the beginning. By midday, the world around Daniel started to crumble. Sophie and I sat on her couch, watching the fallout unfold in real time. My phone was a war zone, missed calls, frantic texts, voicemails filled with shock, anger, and disbelief. Margaret had called 6 times. Daniel's father, a man of few words, had sent a single message. Tell me this isn't true. His workplace? Silence. Which, in a situation like this, was worse than yelling. Then, finally, a message from Daniel himself. Daniel, what the hell did you do? I stared at it, my heart steady, my hands still. A week ago, I would have cried. I would have shaken at the idea of making him angry. Now? I just smiled. Me, told the truth. Something you should try sometime. It took him less than a minute to reply. Daniel, you just ruined my life. I typed back, slow and deliberate. Me, you ruined it yourself. Then I blocked him. Sophie let out a low whistle. Damn. That was cold. I exhaled. It was deserved. And I wasn't done. Step 2, the job that vanished. Daniel worked for a company that prided itself on its family values. I knew they wouldn't take this well. I refreshed my email, my heart pounding. Then, there it was. An email from his company. Subject, urgent meeting request. I opened it. Daniel. Due to allegations that have come to our attention, we need to have an immediate discussion regarding your employment. Please report to HR this afternoon. Until further notice, you are placed on administrative leave. Regards. Human Resources. I laughed. A sharp, bitter sound. Sophie grinned. They're gonna can him. I nodded. Hard. This was what he deserved. Step 3, the public execution. By late afternoon, the rumors had spread like wildfire. One of our mutual friends, a woman named Claire, texted me in a rage. Claire, is this real? Did Daniel actually do this? Me, yes. Claire, he's a monster. Then, another message. Claire, people are talking. It's all over town. Good. Let them talk. Let them all know what he did. Then, another text. Margaret, I can't believe this. My own son. He's dead to me. I closed my eyes, breathing in deep. Daniel had lost his job. His reputation. His family. And the best part? I wasn't finished yet. To be continued. By the time the sun began to set, Daniel was a ghost. His social media accounts? Deleted. His phone? Turned off. His name? Whispered in disgust by everyone who once respected him. I imagined him sitting alone in that house, the house we built together, surrounded by the wreckage of his perfect life. And I felt nothing. Sophie stretched her legs out on the couch beside me. So, what now? I took a slow breath. Now, I take back what's mine. She arched an eyebrow. You mean? I nodded. The house. The money. Every single thing Daniel had ever touched. He didn't deserve to keep a single piece of the life he had so carelessly destroyed. Step 1, the legal strike. I called my lawyer first thing in the morning. The moment I explained the situation, he let out a low, stunned whistle. You're filing for divorce, I assume? Yes. And full control of the house? Absolutely. He exhaled. Given the circumstances, I think we can make that happen. Good. Because there was no way in hell I was letting Daniel and her continue to live in my home. Step 2, the final cut. I still had access to our bank accounts. I logged in, my hands steady. Daniel had moved most of his paychecks into our joint savings, but now, there was nothing joint about us anymore. I transferred every single cent into an account under my name. Then I left him exactly $20. A cruel, sharp sense of satisfaction settled in my chest. Let him figure out how to start over. Alone. Step 3, Emily's reckoning. I had one last move to make. Emily. She had been silent throughout all of this, probably hiding, waiting for the storm to pass. But I wasn't going to let her fade into the background. She had been under my legal guardianship. That meant there were people who needed to know exactly what she had done. I picked up my phone and dialed the orphanage she had come from. The director, a stern woman named Mrs. Harding, answered almost immediately. Hello? I took a breath. It's about Emily. A pause. What about her? And then, with a steady, calm voice, I told her everything. When I finished, there was a long, cold silence on the other end of the line. Then Mrs. Harding spoke. She has nowhere else to go. I clenched my jaw. That's not my problem anymore. And for the first time since this nightmare began, I truly meant it. The house was still standing, but everything inside it had rotted. I arrived unannounced. My key still worked, Daniel hadn't dared to change the locks. When I stepped inside, the air was thick with silence. For a moment, I just stood there, staring at the life I had built. The framed pictures on the walls. The furniture we picked out together. The little details of a home that was supposed to last forever. Now, it was just a carcass. A corpse of what once was. I walked through the hallway, my footsteps echoing. The house felt empty. But I wasn't alone. Because when I reached the living room, there he was. Daniel sat on the couch, head in his hands, looking more wrecked than I had ever seen him. His eyes were bloodshot, his clothes wrinkled. He looked up slowly, as if he already knew I was coming. You did this, he said. I let out a bitter laugh. No, Daniel. You did this. He rubbed his face, exhaling shakily. You've ruined me. I tilted my head. Good. His nostrils flared. I lost my job. I crossed my arms. I know. My parents won't even speak to me. I smirked. Imagine that. He stood up, his movements slow and heavy. You took everything. I held my ground. I just made sure you got what you deserved. His jaw clenched. I loved you. I felt nothing. Not anymore. No, I said softly. If you loved me, you wouldn't have done this. For the first time, Daniel had no answer. I turned to leave, but then, a noise. A soft, hesitant movement from the hallway. I knew who it was before I even looked. Emily. She hovered near the staircase, her face pale, her eyes wide with something that wasn't guilt, it was fear. She looked at me like I was a storm about to swallow her whole. Good. She deserved to be afraid. Where are you going? Daniel asked, his voice almost desperate. I glanced at him one last time. Home, I said. And then I walked out the door. The door clicked shut behind me, sealing Daniel and Emily inside the ruins of what they had created. I walked down the driveway with slow, steady steps, breathing in the cold evening air. Every inch of me should have been shaking, anger, grief, heartbreak. But instead, I felt nothing. Because I had one. I climbed into my car and drove away without looking back. 1 week later, Daniel tried to fight the divorce. He had nothing left to lose, after all. No job. No money. No family. The house was in my name, and he had no way of affording a new place. I knew he was still there, sleeping in the shell of our old life. But I had a lawyer. And the law was on my side. In the end, he folded like paper. The day he signed the papers, I didn't even show up. Sophie did, on my behalf. Did he say anything? I asked her later that night, curled up on her couch with a glass of wine. She smirked. Yeah. He asked if you'd ever forgive him. I scoffed. He can spend the rest of his life wondering. Sophie clinked her glass against mine. That's my girl. Emily's fate. The last I heard, Emily was gone. She left town, apparently. No goodbyes. No attempt to reach out. Mrs. Harding, the orphanage director, had told me coldly, she made her bed. I never asked where she went. I never cared. She had spent 2 years pretending to be my daughter. And then she had ripped my world apart. She was just another ghost now. Daniel's final blow. He tried calling one last time. I saw his name on my screen, hesitated, and then answered. Silence crackled between us. Then. Are you happy? His voice was hoarse. I thought about it. About everything I had lost. About everything I had gained. And then I answered. Yes. A long, ragged breath on the other end. Then, click. And just like that, he was gone. 1 year later. My new home is small, but it's mine. I have a new job, new friends, a new life. And when people ask about my ex-husband, I just smile and say. He doesn't exist anymore. Because as far as I'm concerned, he never did.